You need to make sure that you are on the best behavior for Miss Rowell today. And I will wait a few seconds till Miss Rowell has a chance to make sure that everybody has one of the packets. Today we're going to be going over lesson 1.4, applying addition and subtraction of integers. So you'll notice on the top of page 25, it has the essential question for the day. How do you solve multi-step problems involving addition and subtraction of integers? Before I go any further, again, I want to make sure that you're on your best behavior for Miss Rowell. I don't want to find anybody's name on a list. She certainly has my permission to write anybody's name down or even ask them to leave the room to go see Miss Tripp or the dean if she needs to. When you're solving a multi-step problem, you have to use what you already know about adding and subtracting integers. Remember, we do addition by looking at the signs. We decide if they're both the same. If they're the same, we add and we keep the sign. And if they are different, we keep the sign with the larger absolute value we subtract. We don't do subtraction. We change subtraction to addition, and we add the opposite. So you're going to notice at the bottom of page 25, you're going to see this question. And I really would like you to write this on a separate sheet of paper, how to work this out, because I think you're going to find that you have a hard time squeezing in on the bottom of page 25. So you want to put this on your own notebook paper.
Miss Bigelow, please call the front office. Miss Bigelow.
And you have to excuse the announcement. The announcements are going to come through because these were recorded in the evening and there was announcements being made. So the first thing I have to do when I'm reading through a question like this is I have to be able to write an expression. And an expression, although this is in words, it's a word expression, I need to find a way to write it mathematically. So we read the entire question first to decide what they're looking for. Anna is in a cave 40 feet below the cave entrance. I actually go through and I kind of underline or highlight the pieces that I think are important. She descends, which means she goes down 13 feet. Then she ascends, meaning she goes back up 18 feet. Find her new position, that's what I'm looking for, relative to the entrance. So again, if I'm looking for her position relative to the entrance, I have to think about where she started. She started 40 feet below the entrance, which would be at a negative 40 feet. She descended, which means I'm taking away 13 feet. And then she ascended, which means I'm adding 18 feet. So I've written a mathematical expression. And now remember that we don't do subtraction, which you see here. So I'm going to keep the 40. I'm going to change my subtraction to addition. And I'm going to add the opposite. And this was already addition, so I'm just going to leave it alone. And you can see that my answer is still going to be in feet. When there's more than one number being put together, I look for two numbers that have the same signs, because those I can keep the sign, and I can simply add the two numbers. So I'm going to take 40 and 13 and add them together. So you can see that this would be a negative 53 plus 18. The two integers that are left, a negative 53, a positive 18, they have different signs. So I keep the sign of the one that has the larger absolute value, which is a negative 53, and I would subtract. So I would take 53 and subtract 18 from it. I can't take the 8 away from the 3, so I borrow from the 5. 13 minus 8 is 5. 4 minus 1 is 3. So you can see I ended up at a negative 35. In terms of this problem, that means I'm 35 feet below the entrance. I normally ask if you have any questions. I've tried to allow enough time to get this copied. So we're going to go to the next page, and you'll see this particular problem on the bottom of page 26. And again, I would ask that you work this out on notebook paper, as I don't think there's going to be room there on the page. So add this to your notes. Again, one of the first things we're going to want to do is write an expression for what we're reading there. We want to make sure that we read the problem all the way through so that we can tell what they're actually looking for. So Alex wrote checks. If he's writing checks, we have to remember that that means we're subtracting for $35 and $45. He also made a deposit in his checking account for $180. A deposit means that he's adding money to what's there. Find the overall change in his account. So I had a 35 that's negative. I have a 45 that's negative. Negative or being subtracted, it's being taken out. And I have 180 that is positive. I want to put together the ones that have the same signs, because the rule says that I can keep their sign and add. So I'm going to take 35 and 45 and put them together. 5 and 5 is 10. 4 and 3 is 7, plus the 1 is 8. So you can see here that I was at a negative 80. And I'm adding $180 to it. The 180 and the 80 have different signs. I keep the sign of the one with the larger absolute value, so this time my answer is going to be positive. So I'd take 180 and subtract the 80 from it, since they have different signs, showing that his overall change in his account was $100, and that he actually had $100 more in his account than he did when he started writing the checks on Tuesday. Again, trying to leave you enough time so that you copy, but now we are going to flip to page 27. And here they're talking about comparing values of expressions. Sometimes you may want to compare values obtained by adding or subtracting integers. If you're comparing something mathematically, it typically would mean, is it greater than, is it less than, or is it equal to? Typically, that's what a comparison would mean. And since we're looking at a word problem, I'm probably going to end up writing two different expressions this time, because I got to have two things in order to do a comparison. Again, you're going to find this example on the bottom of page 27. Again, add this to notebook paper as there's not room to work it out there on the bottom. Jim and Carla are scuba diving. Jim started out 10 feet below the surface. He descended, in other words, he went down 18 feet and rose 5 feet and descended 12 more feet. Then he rested. Carla started out at the surface. If she's at the surface, this is really at 0. She descended 20 feet, went down 20 feet. She rose 5 feet, went up 5, and descended another 18, went down 18. Then she rested. Which person rested at a greater depth? This is where we're doing the comparison. We need to find out which one was further below the surface. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write one out for Jim. And I'm just going to put a J here showing that it's Jim's line. He started out 10 feet below the surface. That would be a negative 10. He descended 18 feet. So he took 18 feet more out of that. He rose 5 feet. That would be plus 5. And he descended 12 more feet. That would be negative 12. That's the expression for Jim. As we keep reading, we're going to write the expression for Carla. Carla started out at the surface. Remember, if she's at the surface, she's starting at 0 feet. She descended 20 feet. She went down 20, subtract 20. She rose 5 feet. That would be plus 5. And descended another 18, went down 18 feet. And then she rested. And when we get done, we want to take these two numbers and compare them and decide which one was at a greater depth. In other words, which one was further below the surface. Remember that we don't do subtraction, so any place I see subtraction, I'm going to change it to addition, and I'm going to add the opposite. So, on Jim, I can see I have a negative 10 and a negative 18 that have the same sign. I'm going to add those first. That gives me a negative 28. I can also see I have a negative 28 and then negative 12, also having the same sign, so I'm going to add those as well. 8 and 2 is 10, carry the 1. 2 and 1 is 3, and 1 is 4. So I now have negative 40 plus 5. These actually have different signs, and I would subtract, so this is going to be a negative 35. So I know that when Jim rested, he was 35 feet below the surface. Now I'm going to take a look at Carla. Again, we don't do subtraction, we do adding the opposite. The 0 is really an unnecessary number that's here. I see that I have 20 and 18 with the same sign, so I'm going to add the 20 and 18 together, giving me a negative 38. And then I see that she rose 5 feet. These have different signs. I keep the sign of the larger number, which is going to be negative, and I take 38 and I subtract 5. And I can see that she rested 3 feet below the surface. The question was, who rested at a greater depth? And that would be Jim. Because when it says explain, he rested at 35 feet below the surface, when Carla was only 33 feet below. Again, remember when you're comparing, you're probably going to end up writing two or more expressions. When you're comparing, you're looking at something that's either greater, which was what I was looking for here, less than, or equal to mathematically. That's what we're talking about when we ask you to compare. Okay, your assignment today is page 28 and 29. You need to do 1 through 15. And again, let me emphasize, you need to be on your best behavior for Miss Rowell today. I expect nothing but great reports when I see you tomorrow. Please make sure you have this complete so that we can go over it and I can answer any of the questions that you might have.